I had the mindset of like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I don't want to go back and get a corporate job. And I just said, I'm not going to stop until I succeed. And my definition of failure was giving up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. My guest today is a very great guy. His name is David Mammano, and he is an entrepreneur. He is a teacher of entrepreneurs. He's a writer about entrepreneurs, a speaker about entrepreneurs. He loves the entrepreneurial life. What can we say? We're going to talk a lot about that. And he's the founder of 7 businesses. He is a 3-time Inc. Magazine 5000 Growth Company winner, a 2-time TEDx speaker, and an adjunct professor at the University of Rochester in New York. He now leads the YOUtopia, that's YOUtopia network, a group that helps entrepreneurs to grow and connect. And he's also the host of the highly acclaimed The Gonzo Experience, which has featured such incredible guests as Grant Cardone, Sharon Lechter, Mark Victor Hansen, Ellen Latham, Kevin Harrington, Ed Milet, and yours truly. He is the author of 3 books, including his most recent bestseller, Crash and Learn: Lessons in Business, which features insights from 10 business leaders and their experiences with failing forward, which is something I'm excited to dive into today because I think we can all learn a good amount of lessons from that. Welcome, David. Thank you for being here.
Hey, great introduction. Who wrote that? I always love talking to great people like yourself. I loved having you on my podcast, and you certainly deserved big time to be mentioned with all those other big players because your story is so fascinating and so inspirational. And you got me thinking I want to do an Ironman someday, but still pushing 3 miles on the treadmill. But it's a decision, right?
Well, once you dive in, you'll never go back. You'll be an Ironman for life. So
I just want to wear a Speedo.
By the end of this interview, we will be wearing Speedos. You don't want to tell me that.
Is that why you sent me a case of beer for the? Okay.
Yeah, it's going to get weird today. It's going to get really weird. No, but thank you for being here. It was so great talking to you on your podcast and kind of sharing a little bit about my story. I'm really inspired by a lot of what you're doing and what you're writing about, because you're not just talking about the excellence of a lot of these books are talking about, well, here's how you make it. Here's how you achieve great things. Here's the awesome story about how so-and-so went to billionaire, but not talking about the really, the challenging stuff, like the times we fail, and there's more failures than successes a lot of times, right? So that's what I love about your book. But when we talk about your journey, what got you into this really low, this low stress environment of entrepreneurship, as you call it, right?
Yeah. Well, I think like many of us, it's a calling that can't be ignored. If you have it inside of you, it's up to you to have to muster up the courage to follow it. And for me, it was like a lion, roaring in my stomach that had to get out. I was about 25. I was working at a big radio company selling radio advertising back in the 90s when radio was still very popular. And, I liked, the industry. I liked my boss, my colleagues. I just didn't like working for another company, right? I kind of wanted to, rewrite the script of life, where, let's face it, most people, and God bless them, they'll get up in the morning, they'll go to work and make a lot of money for somebody else, make enough for them, mm-hmm. and then come home and have dinner and watch TV and then go do it all over again. But, I wanted more out of life. I wanted to create something from scratch. I wanted to be in control of it. Not that I'm like a Mussolini control freak, but, I wanted to be in control of the product, of the standards, of the culture. If I was a chef, I wanted to, to be able to do that chef's kiss after every meal, like, look what we made,
Oh yeah.
And just to really have, be proud of, kind of translating what's in my mind to, creating value that somebody would pay for. Mm-hmm. And that was very exhilarating and exciting for me. So 25, 26, I said, I got nothing to lose. I don't have a wife, house, kids. I had a little Geo-Prism car, 140,000 miles. I'm like, well, if I lose that, life goes on, So, decided to cut the cord, got a job at night as a waiter to make money. And during the day, I started my first company, which was a magazine for high school students called Next Step. And it was, this is when print was still around too. And it was a printed magazine for high school students. And we would help them with college planning and career planning and life skills. And that was my first major business. And then once you've, tasted that Kool-Aid, you can't go back for, corporate iced tea ever again, so.
Well, that beginning sounds a lot like, I guess, I don't know a lot about Richard Branson, but it sounds a lot like Richard Branson's start, where he started a magazine, right, for college kids and everything like that. So similar. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to be a billionaire one day, but I mean, the foundation has been laid, right?
Yeah. No, I would love that. Yeah. He had a magazine in the 70s, I believe, called Student. And that was his first gig. Since then he's done okay. I have not followed his success yet, but like you said, it's never too late, right? So
well, that's right. Well, you made it pretty good for yourself too, having, gone from that magazine to, did you eventually sell that, or did you spin it off, or how did you go about with that from there?
Yeah, we ended up franchising it all over the country. So we were in every state. We had free distribution in a little over 20,000 high schools 5 times a year. We made our money by selling ads. But as the digital revolution really took over and print became less and less of a popular media, we put it all online, and then I sold it. I sold it to a woman in New York City that had more of a digital marketing flair. And so I moved on from that business after I helped her for a couple of years, but I ended up selling it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, then and so through that process of starting that first business, I know it's not. Tell me where your mindset was, because a lot of people, they start the businesses, and the second it gets hard, it's like, well, I can't do that. I got to get a real job. I mean, did you go through any of that process? Did you feel it was easy? Did you feel it was really hard, but you went anyway? How did you keep that mindset going?
Well, I had the mindset of like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go back and get a corporate job. And I just said, I'm not going to stop until I succeed. And my definition of failure was giving up. Mm-hmm. If the business didn't make it, then I would start a second business and a third business, until I got it right. So failure was, stopping to be an entrepreneur again in my mind. So, but yeah, I was just, when you're 25, 26, especially, you're full of piss and vinegar, and it was just go. During the day, I ended up taking out a partner, and she really handled a lot of our writers and designers, whereas I handled the business side and the sales side. We were a great team. And so, during the day I was a, luxurious magazine publisher. But, by day by night I was, serving ravioli at Mario's Italian restaurant. And so that's how I made my money at night, and we didn't really make a lot of money with the magazine until I was like 3 or 4 years, so. Wow. But I was determined. I'm like this, I saw progress. We saw progress every year. And then when we started franchising, it just really took off. That's when I got to quit my job at night and just be a full-time magazine publisher, we had a great run. We had a great run until, like I said, the digital revolution really started to kill print, especially with young adults, especially with high school students, college students, So it was sad. is to see that model go away. But the internet has crushed, we'll say altered many, many, many models, right? And unless you're a surgeon or a dentist, where it's tough to do that stuff over the internet, your business probably has been changed in some way, right? So
yeah, that's true. I mean, we're talking on a medium here that's replacing some of the terrestrial radio. I don't know a lot about that world, but man, everybody can get into this world. That's for sure. So, but yeah. So, and were you able to finally leave the job, the waiting tables? Were you able to leave that within those first 3 years, or after you sold it? How long did you do that for?
No, I did that for about 3 years when we when we started to franchise the magazine. That's when the money started rolling in. We set up a system to franchise it in different states, because I had grown it to all New York State, very profitable. And I said, well, and the reason why we didn't expand nationally, which is one magazine, because most of our advertisers were colleges, and most colleges do most of their recruiting within about a 150-mile radius. So, for instance, Nazareth College in Rochester, New York, doesn't do too much recruiting in Utah, right? So I would have lost most of my advertisers if I just went with like one national edition. So we ended up doing regional franchises around the country. And it worked out very well. I mean, they would pay me a franchise fee every issue. And we would sell ads in each other's magazine. For instance, if Nazareth did want to advertise in Texas for some reason, the Texas franchise would gladly take the ad, and he would pay me a commission, and vice versa. So there were some different ways to make money, which was great.
That's a brilliant model. Yeah, it's incredible. And you said, so I love the way that you framed failure in there, because it kind of gets to a lot of what's in the book, which I have here, Crush and Learn.
Oh, there you go. Look at that.
Yeah, I finished reading it. It's a great read, by the way, and I want to dive into it. But I love the idea of failure equaling giving up, because just having that frame of mind, sets a standard high for like, okay, within the business, the only way I fail is if I stop doing what I'm doing. It encourages persistence. Did you take and you took that mindset into the next business and the next business? So after you sold, Next Step, did you start right into the next thing right away? Did you feel the bug? How did that transition work?
Yeah, I ran Next Step 21 years, and we had done some side new businesses within the education category. We had started different magazines. We had started a student loan company. So that was part of the 7 businesses, was related businesses in the education field. But when I sold everything, I should say because I was alone, started a company called Avanti. Now, Avanti means move forward in Italian. And, my, grandparents are from Sicily, so Italian is in my blood big time. And so it was, Avanti, move forward, very similar name to Next Step. It had that forward movement still. So I started a company called Avanti, and it was called the Avanti Entrepreneur Network. And what we would do is we would help people start and grow businesses. I had a coaching program. I started a podcast for entrepreneurs. And then the most popular thing we ended up doing is we would do events. We would do monthly events for entrepreneurs here in Rochester. So they would pay an annual membership fee. And every month, it was a third Wednesday of every month after work, we would meet at a big restaurant or a country club or a business that had enough space. And we would, the first half would be, beer, wine, hors d'oeuvres, networking. And then the second half, I bring in a live speaker. And it could be like a superstar entrepreneur, or it could be somebody who's going to teach them about, sales, marketing, leadership, finance, etc. And so it turned out really great. We had almost 100 members here in Rochester. We ended up licensing it instead of franchising it. I built up a licensing network. So we ended up licensing it to about 6 cities and got it going there as well. And then, COVID hit, right? So, in-person events became not so popular. We put it online, but after a few months, people stopped showing up as much. And it kind of became like I was forcing it. I think people were getting zoomed out. They're on Zoom all day, don't want to be, on Zoom at night. And So I just shelved it. I put it on hold. And during that time, I ended up doing some sales consulting, some marketing consulting, and some coaching to pay the bills. I got 3 kids.
Yeah, right. Well, that's that was a tough time for a lot of people as far as COVID is concerned, especially those of us who relied on networks and coaching or anything like that had to adjust. I mean, you talk about adaptation. Did that shift your mindset in any way? I mean, you mentioned you kind of went into sales consulting, something you knew and everything like that. But was that kind of the contingency plan you went with all along? Did you plan on turning that into something, or how was that? I guess what was the nature of that transition?
Well, I felt like I was kind of thrown off the boat and swimming for my life, and what am I going to do? It's going to be very hard to start a business during COVID. The current one was not working anymore. Mm-hmm. So it really was just like a life movie to get me through COVID. Let me use the skills that I have to help other people and other companies. Until I could see the light at the end of the COVID tunnel and decide what I'm going to do next. Yeah.
And so coming out of COVID, how has that process been for you? Have you been able to re-up the Avanti network, or you have YOUtopia? Is that the next evolution of it, or how is that working?
Yeah. So, during COVID, I decided I wanted a fresh new brand, mm-hmm. and, something that I felt like Avanti had the reputation now of I don't want to say failing, but put on the back burner, got a little stale. And I wanted to, really create a utopian network, where it was just full of love and heart-centered entrepreneurs. I wanted to make it pandemic proof. So I said I want it online, and therefore it allowed me to be global from the start. So I was telling someone who now is in YOUtopia about the idea, and I must have said the word, YOUtopia, like with you a couple times, the mm-hmm. letter U, and I said I just have to come up with a name for it. And she goes, "Oh, I thought you had a name. I thought you named it YOUtopia." And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting," And of course, my creativity kicked in and said, "Well, let's make it a little bit different." So YOUtopianetwork.com, nice. And so that was launched a little over a year ago. And we have members from all over the world. Spain, Dubai, Canada, of course, the U.S. And it's been wonderful. We have they pay an annual membership fee. And the value we bring, and you've been a speaker every Tuesday at noon Eastern. We have a guest speaker who gives a training, a presentation. Mm-hmm. So it's like this once a week learning nugget that's really helpful for the members. And then once a month, we have a mastermind. And we break it off into smaller groups, about 8 people. And we meet for, a few hours, and we discuss, challenges, opportunities in that, confidential mastermind format.
Mm-hmm. What I love about that, what I love about that network and what you're doing in general is it sounds like the theme of your, development here is really bringing people together, bringing entrepreneurs together, helping them to network. And that's one of the things, this show is called Flow Over Fear. And the nature of it is that a lot of people let fear be an obstacle to, achieving their best. And one of the ways we can get out of that fear is to just find a community. And so finding a community of like-minded people that are going through the same kind of challenges is huge. And I know that that's one of the values that they can get from something like that. Have you experienced anything like that from your members, experiencing kind of getting beyond that fear, pushing beyond what they believe their limitations are?
Oh yeah. Every day. A lot of our speakers like you will help people and inspire people to mm-hmm. push through perceived obstacles, with the emphasis word on perceived. And you were on the couch, drinking wine, and X years later, you're in Hawaii at the world's top Ironman, right? So there was a barrier, but that was in your mind, yeah. Right? Like you did it, right? And so you proved that the barrier was invisible. And, that's what we try to do with a lot of our speakers is bring in speakers that are going to inspire them to realize that, these barriers are not real, that fear is not real, and then also with our masterminds is to really try to help them, talk through the fear of what is kind of scaring them to move to that next level. Yeah,
that's a great message to bring in. So powerful. I'm glad that you're doing that because it just takes knowing that there's that a lot of the people that achieve great things are also human, and they've gone through that same stuff. So it's just finding the right kind of guides. And I love how you did that in your book, in the recent book that you have, the Crash and Learn. You brought 10 business leaders together to help write this book. And each one of them contributes a story that talks about one of their personal quote unquote failures that really helped them fail upward. And what I love about it is that, you're bringing a new idea of a fresh idea that there's no perfect trajectory towards success. It's kind of combined with a lot of these little things. So can you kind of talk a little bit about the book and what your goal is with it and what you're trying to communicate through it?
Yeah, so I had the idea, for the book because it stemmed from the stories I heard on my podcast. Mm-hmm. I started my podcast in October 2016. And I would often ask my guests, tell me about a time where you crashed and almost burned. And a lot of entrepreneurs would be like, oh, which story, right? Which one do you want, right?
Right.
And so, a lot of them would share this story of like, I thought, I didn't know how I was going to get through the next day, but, I picked up the pieces and they all had these great stories of, crashing, not burning, but rising like the phoenix again. And I thought there's something there because, most of the stories we hear about are how great people are, we right. see their massive business, their big house, their car, etc. And I just thought, like you said, it'd be nice to have vulnerable entrepreneurs share their stories of the ups and downs because we all have them, Mm-hmm. So, I heard over and over again that became like the most popular part of my podcast was the sharing of these stories. So I thought it'd be a really cool book,
Yeah.
And so it was, at first it was going to be crashed and almost burned. But Karen Calder, one of our authors, said about crash and learn. And I'm like, Karen, drop the mic. That's it, So it became Crash and Learn. And I just found, through social media, reaching out to people, I found 9 other people that were willing to share their stories of the highs and lows. And I just think it's very helpful, for especially the beginning entrepreneur or, a seasoned entrepreneur that's going through some tough times to realize that, if you're in good company, we've all been there and done that. And you know what, you're earning another stripe in the journey of being an entrepreneur,
Yeah. It's almost like it's a rite of passage to go through that kind of process. And that's, kind of why I joked about it at the beginning by saying it's the low stress world of entrepreneurship. It's nothing even close to that. It's incredibly, it's always on, there's always something. And what did you have any kind of, well, for you, what kind of, have you had any, what were some experiences that you have had that crash and learn kind of experiences for you? Have you had anything really profound on that level that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, well, it involves a magazine because what happened was, I had a staff of about 15. Mm-hmm. And a magazine is, newspaper magazine. It's a very cost intensive business because you're paying for paper, you're paying for mailing, you're paying for printing, and so it's not like just in today's world. You have a media company online. There's other costs, tech costs, I guess, but paper, printing, mailing, it gets very expensive, right? And so we built this great company, and I I didn't cut the model in time, because as the digital revolution was taking over, I was very emotional about the people. I'm like, they've been with me for a long time. They helped me build a company. And then, and went with the model. I'm like, well, in hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, I should have let print go a long time ago. But I'm like, oh, well, you know what? We'll sell bundled packages where they get print and online advertising, So, but what it was happening more and more is the advertisers were just saying, hey, we love you, Dave. We love Next Step. We just don't want print anymore. Mm-hmm. So while revenue was tanking, I still was continuing the model with all the expenses and the people. So what turned into what was a very profitable, great business, turned into something that really crashed. And I ended up building up a lot of debt. I took out like private bank loans to, cover expenses and then fund some new ideas. And so it really turned into something that was, very painful. Having to let people go, having this debt build up. So a very difficult time. That being said, I continue to move forward with new ideas and new hope, like any entrepreneur would.
Yeah. What was so obviously the learning experience from that is probably should have, in hindsight, probably should have let it go earlier. Or what kind of lesson would you learn from that? Because it sounds like you're acting on compassion. I mean, wanting to take care of your people. I mean, that's certainly something I can relate to. In challenging times, you want to be that. So in the midst of it, that's what you want to do. But did the lesson there kind of outweigh that aspect, or was the lesson really, you should have cut it earlier? What other lessons have you learned from that?
Yeah, looking back, and as they say, hindsight's 20/20, right? That I should have read, the trends better. That this digital revolution was only going to get more and more entrenched in content habits, marketing, advertising. Mm-hmm. So, and we had hundreds of relationships with colleges advertising. So looking back, if I was really smart back then, I would have said, hey, we're going to retire the print and we're going to become a digital marketing company for in the education market. Mm-hmm. Right? And change it to like Next Step Digital or Next Step Media, and that probably would have been the best way to pivot the company to success. Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's gone through that before, do you find that's a valuable exercise to look back and kind of give I should have done that? Does that help kind of educate you for the future?
Yeah, you become a little bit more gun shy about, diving into, something new that has a lot of expenses associated with it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, YOUtopia is beautiful. My only expense is, Zoom, $14.95 a month, right? Yeah. And then my time, right? So there's no paper mailing, there's some minor tech bills, but learn to say, okay, how can I continue to be an entrepreneur with it, but avoid a lot of cost risks up front until the model is proven, and then I know what I have to do to run this profitably.
Yeah. And I guess you have to mitigate. I mean, you have to become good at mitigating risks when you're an entrepreneur. But to what extent do you? Is there a balance there where you have to kind of accept, hey, at some point I am going to have a setback rather than failure, but like more of a setback. What am I willing to accept? How do you kind of find that balance?
Well, I think that's where something like YOUtopia comes in, or whatever network you're in. People are in EO, YPO, Vistage. I think it's really about having a tribe of trusted, kindred spirits that have your best interest in mind to be able to talk it through, get feedback, get their thoughts, get they're having them share their experiences to, make us really think a little bit more before jumping in. A lot of entrepreneurs like myself, we are very bright, shiny light entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
And so, which could be good and bad, right? There's good parts about that because we move fast, we have a lot of energy. But the double-edged sword is, we move fast, and we may be spending the wrong energy on something that is not a good idea, and then we lose interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
So it's good, I'm all for, a healthy, balanced ADHD entrepreneur. That being said, they're much more successful when they surround themselves with people that can help them to see the full spectrum of what's going on or what could go on.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because I know that that's certainly something I struggle with, and I love that you mentioned community being that source of where you lean into, because I think as leaders, one of the things that does scare people who are getting into entrepreneurship is the uncertainty of what can happen. And we have to understand that that's going to be part of it. Right.
Yeah.
And, but at least getting the perspective from that mind trust, that collective mind, what's that word I'm looking for? Hive mind. Yeah, that we can, help, I guess, grow through that. So, and so you're also, in addition to doing YOUtopia and building these networks, you're also educating people at the University of Rochester. So you're a professor there. Did that start recently, or was that something that you've been involved in for a while?
Well, it's a very unique position. So I don't have my PhD or anything, but it's a fifth-year program that was originally funded by the Kauffman Foundation, which is very famous for funding entrepreneurial ventures within education often. So they came to U of R and they wanted to create a fifth-year program for students that would stay an extra year and start a business. Mm-hmm. And Kauffman would pay for that year. So it's a free fifth year. They have to qualify and everything. Right. And so U of R, I think they started in 2011. And the professor that taught it, he would have me come in to speak often to the students. And then he retired, and he thought it would be a great replacement. So, and I said, yeah. So I've been doing that, I think, about 6-7 years now. And so it's a very non-traditional role at a college. It's a fifth-year program. And I basically, I'm almost like a business advisor, a business coach to these students starting the business,
Okay. Yeah.
I get, and because I'm a real life entrepreneur, I get to, teach them, from the MBA and the PhD that I got in the streets, building businesses instead of, in the brick and mortar buildings, which are valuable too. But there's nothing like an entrepreneur, like saying, oh, well, it happened to me, and here's how I got through it. Instead of like reading like in a textbook, here's a case study. Say, oh, well, and this is how I got through it. Oh, I also know 3 people you can talk to, and here's 2 books you can read that help me. So just that one-on-one personal experience is I think is very valuable.
That's that sounds like a neat program and a great idea on how to bridge that gap with business. Is there, at least from my experience, having gotten an MBA, because I felt like that's what I needed to actually know how to do business. There's value in that textbook style stuff, but there was absolutely probably zero value to the actual experiential, of knowing what it's like to start a business, to run a business, and do all of the human stuff that you need to do. So that sounds like it's a great program for that. And then I know you got to run, but I do want to ask you a little bit about the Gonzo Experience. First off, how did you come up with the name? So where's the origination of the name Gonzo Experience?
Yeah, so that was my fraternity name in college. I went to University at Buffalo, SUNY Buffalo. And I was in a fraternity, great fraternity, SAMI, Sigma Alpha Mu. and still very, very close with a lot of my brothers today. And we still use our fraternity names. Like we use them on campus. Like if you ran into a woman my age and said, "Oh, you went to UB? You went to University of Buffalo? Did you know David Mammano?" They might say, "I don't think so." But if you said, "Oh, did you know Gonzo?" They more likely would say, "Oh my God, yes!" So
Love it.
So like we like so my brothers. I mean, it's always, "Hey Gonzo, hey." It's just like I didn't even think twice about it. I'm Gonzo, And
Yeah.
So once again during COVID, I changed the name. My podcast was the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast, but when I changed Avanti, during COVID, my creativity I think was just boiling over. So I wanted to rebrand the podcast as well. So I just named it the Gonzo Experience, and it kind of ties in. One thing I'm doing more of is professional speaking, and I focus my speaking on infusing humor into the workplace for better sales, better leadership, better marketing. There's there's a ton of research. We're talking Harvard, Stanford, MIT research that proves that if you infuse humor effectively and professionally into the workplace, everything grows, right? And I used to be a stand-up comedian in my 20s, so I'm kind of mixing the chocolate with the peanut butter, of my business and my comedy into a product to help businesses grow. The Gonzo Experience, I think, you may have an idea that it's going to be fun, right? There's going to be some smiles, just like Gonzo the Muppet, right? And and so it's kind of a nice tie into what I'm doing, going into businesses and doing these presentations and events, doing keynotes. It's called Putting Funny Back in Business, and it's all about helping businesses professionally infuse humor into the workplace. So it ties in nicely to the podcast. It's a good yin and yang,
I love it. Yeah, that's something obviously I need a lot more work on. At least my employees think I do. I think I'm pretty funny, but anyway, yeah, we'll find that balance.
Yeah, well, and
I think it's great what you're doing.
It's not necessarily about being a stand-up comedian at work. It's about creating more smiles. In just infusing more humor, which is not always like telling jokes. So, but yeah, I've got a whole, we call it a laugh and learn. So if you ever want me to come into your company, Adam, and I'll teach you and everybody how to professionally make that happen at your company.
I love it. Yeah, I love that. And I'll tell you, I get the hint. I will wear Speedos more often at work.
You should. You should.
But no,
everyone's clamoring for it.
Right. Yeah. That's the new thing. I think HR will be called if I do that. But definitely, I love the idea of the lunch and learn. And if people want to learn more about that or get a hold of you to do something like that to speak for them, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best place is my website, davidmammano.com, and it's MAMMANO, davidmammano.com. Everything is there. They can also email me, david@davidmammano.com. I'm on Facebook, awesome. LinkedIn, Instagram, all that great stuff. They can find me there. I use LinkedIn a lot, professionally. So great place to find me there and connect. I answer all my messages at LinkedIn.
That's great. Yeah.
I can't keep up with all the birthday ones. It was my birthday on Friday. And between Facebook and LinkedIn, you get hundreds of people wishing you a happy birthday. And I'm like, I give up, I can't do it. But thank you, everybody.
Yeah, well, happy birthday to you. And if you're listening, wish David a happy birthday on LinkedIn for sure. And you can also find his TED Talks there, which are really entertaining. So yeah, go check those out on davidmammano.com and buy his book, Crash and Learn, Lessons in Business. And you could get that on Amazon and check out the Gonzo Experience podcast because it's a lot of fun. And there's some great guests there. And David, thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome. We'll have to have a round 2 to talk a little bit more about humor in business.
Awesome, Adam. Thank you. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Your incredible energy and your beautiful soul. Very, very glad that you came into my world, and keep on doing the good work that you're doing.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much, David. That means a lot. And I'll talk to you soon. And to the rest of you, have a great day. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.